You know, I love the sound of a slate.
Yeah, when you're with your name attached to it?
My name doesn't have to be on it. I could be there for 2 hours. It doesn't matter.
Hello, and welcome to the very first episode of The A-List. I'm joined today with a very good friend, writer, producer, actor, many hats person, CJ Wilkins.
Hey, Matt.
Dude,
How's it going?
really good.
Nice.
Thanks for coming.
Oh, it's my pleasure.
So I mentioned that you're a writer, producer, actor, and along with some other stuff in there.
Yeah.
Where's the beginning of this journey? Where did it start for you?
Oh, gosh, I think like most people in the arts, it starts when you're in elementary school or even before that. For me, it was, taking drama class in junior high. I played Tiny Tim in a Western version of A Christmas Carol called A Christmas Chorale. And I was stuck after that. But I took a break of like close to 30 years where other things get in the way, right? You're focused on your career, you're focused on your education. And, I returned to it in a really, really weird path. I had a really bad accident and was rehabbing, and I ended up at the climbing gym rehabbing, and then some friends at the climbing gym said, hey, do you want to take salsa lessons? And I said, no. What day are they? Let's do it. And so I started taking salsa lessons, and at the building that has the salsa lessons also had like an acting workshop. And so I took that acting workshop, really enjoyed that, and thought, what's next? And the theater company that was putting that on, just had somebody drop out of a play that had started rehearsals that day. And so they're like, can you be in this play? And so I started my acting career back in 2017 then in theater, did a number of shows, and then started writing. And so I wrote a couple of theater shows, became a full member of the Playwrights Guild of Canada. And then that's a skill set that I kind of bring from my professional world as a communications guy and leadership development guy. And here we are, full union member, full member of the Playwrights Guild of Canada. And I feel like there's just not enough time to get it all done.
Wow. And in between, like you talk about 2017 sort of being that beginning on the professional path. We are in 2023 in there, a little bit of a stale time with COVID jumping in there. So that's a relatively short time to have that sort of resume of accomplishments. That's pretty crazy.
It's neat, yeah. I like to move quickly with my career. So, I had been in 3 plays and then I wrote my first one. And so I wrote and directed that and had it professionally produced. And then did a one-man show after that I wrote, directed, and produced myself at a Fringe festival. So after that, I was like, okay, well, that's really fun. I want to challenge myself even more. And that's when I started getting into film, which was just 2-3 months before COVID started. So.
Wow. Okay, talk about timing.
Yeah. It was great because here in Canada, we opened up first, right? So you and I really got to know each other on one of the first shows that was being filmed in North America.
Yeah, one of the first films back.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's wild. And in some ways it feels like yesterday, but at the same time, a lot has happened between then and now. And I've, had the fortune of, being aware of the projects that you've been a part of up to that point. Where do you sort of tie in the writing with the acting? Or like as a creative mind, do they come from the same place or do they serve different purposes for you? Or
I think that the writing and the acting really inform one another. Even in my professional career, not acting, not in the creative side, if I have a really intense audition for a particular type of character, I bring that into my professional work. And likewise, in my professional work, I bring that into acting as well. And so the writing piece allows you to think about who these characters are that you're creating in a far more in-depth way than when you're auditioning for something, or if you're a day player, saying, here's your latte. kind of thing. That character has an entire life behind them. And your job in that story is to serve the lead or to serve the story. But if you can do that in a really authentic way, as if that character has a real life behind them, and that's where the writing comes in, is you would create that life for that person. Yeah, it's exciting stuff.
So let's talk a little bit about process. I think we can both agree that, actors and writers probably have different processes. That there's different ones out there. And I know you to be somebody that's very educated and does continuing education. What do you find has been either a game changer or that you feel is sort of the pillar on either front? I mean, acting, writing.
Yeah, I think for writing for me is, coming from a communications career, it's completely different. The only thing that's the same is the letters that you're using, from A to Z, or Z here, because this is the A list, as an example. Here's a little inside joke for pre-production. Oh, good stuff. The permission to be absurd in your writing is, once I figured that out, when it didn't have to be based in reality. When you do theater projects, they can't quite, in my mind, be as fanciful because of the constraints of being on stage. It's very difficult to do montages or time jumps and that sort of thing. And so, the first few sort of short films and things like that I was working on in film, I was thinking with a theater brain, and then went, oh my gosh, like I can have aliens show up if I want. Like I can have anything I want appear on the page that then is going to appear on screen. But having a business mind as well, I'm always cognizant when I'm writing of how much is this going to cost? Like, how many actors do I need to hire if somebody's going to produce this? How much is it going to cost for them? How many actors? Is it going to be heavy on special effects? That type of thing. So I try to keep things simple, and that is because of the theater background of going. It's a lot more difficult to work with 12 actors 3 days a week for 2 months than it is 4 actors. So I try to be really realistic in my writing, at the same time as allowing it to be unlocked and fanciful.
Do you ever feel restrained, like in your writing? Like, do you ever feel like held back?
Absolutely. I think the idea of you don't know what you're doing. I think every writer feels like they don't know what they're doing when they're writing. And so for me, it's just a matter of like, let's see what I can get on the page. And I did stand-up comedy for a little while, and that is a really good informer of writing as well, where you're literally starting with, just the microcosm of a thought that you think is funny and that there's a joke in there. For example, I woke myself up in the middle of the night just looking at the term, getting into a tit for tat with someone. And the first thought I had is like, well, I'll trade you my tat for your tit. Like, we could sort this out pretty easily. We don't need to argue about it, right? And I think there's an entire episode of Seinfeld in there, where Jerry and George are arguing about the ethics of tit for tat arguing.
Why do you have my tit?
Yeah,
when exactly. You can have my... Anyways.
Yeah, my tat is so much better than my tit. Nobody wants a tit because I'm a guy.
And I'm thinking tat, like short for tattoo. Anyways.
Well, that's it. So if I had a tattoo place, I'd call it Tits and Tats, and it'd be plastic surgery and tattoos. You can get all your cosmetic work done in one place.
Yeah.
Tit or tat.
So in terms of like process, when you go from concept to being able to sort of type in the end, what does that arc look for? I know you kind of gave a little bit of insight into the stand-up, but like if you've written shows that have been produced, what like take us through a day of that, or how do you get through it?
I think the key in that is you can string 80,000 jokes together, but if there's no humanity and no story in it, it doesn't mean anything to anyone. And so one of the things that I really try to keep in mind is who are the characters I'm writing and who in the audience would resonate with those characters. And so it's one thing to be funny and to be sort of class clown in what you're trying to do when you're writing, but the other part is how do you make that so that somebody sees themselves in it? And so I always look at my characters. If I do a first draft, I'll drop characters, I'll merge characters together sometimes if there's just not enough strength in one.
What informs that decision? Like if you were to eliminate or merge them? Yeah,
do they have humanity, right? So I think even characters who, I've got a scene in my TV pilot, Socialized Medicine, where there's a nurse that is seen for one scene in one line, and it's that nurse that you imagine is easily grossed out. She's probably too smart to be a nurse. No offense to nurses, I think they're the most important people on the planet. But that type of person who, they were good at math in elementary school, and you probably picked on them because they wore glasses. And she has this entire backstory in my head as she walks by and sees the scene of the main character and literally says 2 words. And so I want people to be able to think of that character, that nurse walking by, and go, I know who that nurse is. I've seen that person before. Either like through actual experience of being in a hospital or this idea that they know that person from elementary school, where, it's the girl who's maybe picked on for being smart or, that kind of thing.
So having been on both sides of the fence, like as writer and actor, when you see people take your words on, what does that feel like? Because when you're talking about, just the way you explain this nurse, I want to see this nurse on screen now. There's so much depth that you've just created. How does that come out with other actors that are playing the characters that you've created? Yeah,
so it's all about being realistic as a director when you're working on that sort of project where the actor, in order for them to do a good job, in order for me as an actor to do a good job, I need to be able to put myself into that character. And in my experience, what that generally does is it makes that character even more deep. And so...
Like, do you mean by putting yourself in, like, you're infusing that character with your own life experiences, or you go and play that character first to kind of feel it, or...
No, I mean, I think every actor needs to bring themselves into their work.
Yeah.
Right? Otherwise, it's inauthentic and it becomes caricature. And I'm not looking for caricature in my work. Even when it might be slapstick type humor, those characters still need to have real feelings in order for those jokes to mean anything. And so when I'm working with actors, I want their input. I want their spin on things, because then they might draw at it from an angle that I didn't see. And, other than the fact that, you're always working on a time crunch, those contributions generally add to a good discussion at the very least, and a far more rich character than I could have even imagined in the first place.
Have you ever had a situation where the discussion goes down a dead end, or you're just not, it's just not coming to fruition, like with an actor, or?
Yeah, I've had actors that I've had a challenging time working with. They often think that they're right and that's the way to play it, or they lack the confidence to try new ideas and new ways of doing things. And so generally I just try to provide the space for them to figure that out and get to where I'm trying to go. And if they can't, you're on a deadline. You're on that it might not work, but the show goes on, right?
Yeah, and I mean, whether it is, like you've mentioned, whether you're shooting on film or you're on stage, the show does go on. The day moves on, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. I did a show, I produced a show where I lost half my cast over the course of rehearsals. And so the idea of who this character is, one of those characters had to switch an age range from being sort of a cougar type, female vixen who is the most effective killer at getting somebody in bed who now regrets the fact that she's probably done that for a few too many years, to somebody who has a youthful overconfidence in their ability to do that, just because of what actors were available. And so but that brings it to become a stronger project. I don't think that there's right or wrong in making theater or film. I think that there is collaboration and creativity, and they can collide in ways that clash, just the way some foods don't go well together. You know, the last time you brush your teeth and eat a banana, probably not a good idea.
Not my favorite flavor.
No.
Yeah, I do have my foods that I refrain from after. So let's talk a little bit about genres here. It's you've got this really cool wide range that is not a lot of actors are able to accomplish, you know, quite the wide range of what you're able to do, or at least from what I've seen. But one of the hardest genres I find to watch, critique, or be part of is comedy.
Yeah.
And it's definitely, you know, the fabric of who I know C.J. Wilkins to be.
Yeah, for sure.
Where does that come from? Like, have you just always been a funny person?
So I grew up with an older brother who's funnier than me. And so I always knew that I was funny, but I was never fast enough to be funny. And so I think wit and speed are something that are a skill that you need to practice over and over and over again. And I think the vast majority of actors, particularly film actors, are scared to exercise that creativity. And so for me, I would be miserable if I couldn't exercise that creativity on a daily basis. And it comes at the risk of putting your foot in your mouth from time to time and saying the absolute wrong thing. I remember in grade 7, my grade 7 homeroom teacher was announcing to the class that she was taking some time off to take care of somebody who'd become very ill. And I started applauding.
But he's valiant.
And the dirty looks were real. And in my head, I was going, yeah, you're taking time off. And like, obviously that is the wrong expression to be giving somebody when they are grieving somebody who is not well, and they're not taking time off to go to Maui. But you can't lose that fear. The moment that you second guess yourself, that's your timing gone. And so for me, comedy, when you see it written on a page in a film script, that writer has a pacing in mind for that comedy. And you, as somebody who's comedy forward, need to understand by breaking down the words where that's coming from and what that pacing looks like. I don't think most actors are good at comedy. And it's because it's more vulnerable than drama to me. Right? It's really easy to be mad. It's really easy to be sad. It's really difficult to make someone else laugh.
Sure. Yeah. When you mentioned keeping up on the exercise of wit and speed, do you have anything that you have as a routine or that you could impart to somebody that wanted to sort of sharpen their wit?
For me, it's just the license to do it. I practice it every day. Anytime I'm talking with my partner, fortunately, we have a very solid relationship where she encourages me to be funny, and we will call each other out when it's not. And that doesn't come at the risk of not doing it in the future. It comes at I get positive reinforcement on being funny every day from my partner. You know, she loves my jokes. I'm funnier to her than I am to the rest of the entire world, I'm sure. But to have that opportunity to practice it on a daily basis with the people who are around you. It's like when you see a child in elementary or junior high school is practicing dance, they're not just going to do it at dance class. They need to do it in the living room. They need to do it at the shopping center, in the grocery store, while they're walking to school. that's what being funny is as well, is practicing over and over and over the different ways that you think things are funny. And some people aren't funny, and they shouldn't be. And they need to stop.
Or take a class.
Or take a class. And, and I think, if somebody was to take a class, improv is where you become vulnerable, right? You and I have done improv together. It provides a safe space to make mistakes because somebody else is there to catch the ball, which I really, really appreciate. And the other thing about being funny is it's about noticing things from a point of view that other people might not. And so I like to deconstruct language when I'm being funny, to sort of tilt my point of view. So, watching comedy, I think, is an important piece, and going, why is that funny? And actually thinking about how a joke is constructed. And I don't want to make it too much work for people, but like watching comedy isn't that hard.
I mean, you mentioned something that I think is the key, or part of the key to comedy,
Right.
and within what you're just saying, and that's timing. And when you're talking about the deconstruction of how do you define timing? How is it defined in comedy?
In comedy, it's all about respect. It's about respecting the audience's ability to understand what you're saying. So if you take a sitcom with a laugh track, for example, how many jokes, like a multicam comedy, Big Bang Theory, let's use that as an example. Those actors know that they need to wait to deliver the line after a punchline because they've got a live studio audience. So they get that feedback of having a live studio audience, and the audience gets to participate in this show through their laughter, which affects their timing. When you're in a single cam situation, you don't have that timing, so it is a bit blind. I recommend anybody do something in front of an audience in theater in order to get that exposure to figuring out what's funny so that the audience has a chance to be a participant. Otherwise, the joke's not funny. If they don't have time to absorb it, it's not funny. It didn't happen.
Right.
It's like if a tree falls in the forest. If a joke happens and nobody can laugh at it, was it funny? No.
And it's probably one of those few forms where it does require audience participation.
Yeah, I think so. I can't tell jokes to the mirror. I know a lot of stand-up people do their routines in front of a mirror. I would not do that because I'm not going to look to myself to participate in my own listening. The mirror isn't going to give me what I need to listen for the right timing. Right? Timing is a listening thing, not a participation thing as an action. It's a listening piece.
That, you know what, I've actually never heard it explained like that, and I think it makes the absolute most sense, especially when we're talking about theater, right? If you're doing a 21 show run, and you were to record each and every single one of those shows, yes, I'm sure timing, pulse, beat is going to be relatively the same, but anybody that's played theater knows that your Sunday matinee audience is much different than your Friday night audience, much different than your 2-for-1 Tuesday audience.
Yeah, absolutely. If I could avoid Friday night shows,
Yeah,
I
right?
would.
Yeah.
Because the audience is there to be impressed. They're not there to participate, right? They've had a long week. They would rather watch TV. They don't want to be there in the same way. I love opening nights where you get to test it. You get to finally see what that timing is going to be. And one of my favorite joys is working with actors who get it. Working with actors who also have good timing, where they can respect the audience. And, we could be looking at each other on a stage, and we're both listening to the audience in order to know what to do next.
Right, yeah.
Right? Even though we've practiced it the same way for 2 months. So I love that feeling. That's so exciting.
It's a great unpacking of comedy, and it's something that I'll have to chew on a little bit more, because when you talk about the deconstruction and understanding, I think comedy is one of the hardest things to sort of try and explain, and it's so subjective, right? You know.
Oh, absolutely, right? Like we were talking before we were shooting, our senses of humor overlap, and we have things that each of us don't find funny. And we just look at each other and go, what? But we're not going to bring that person down for thinking what they think is funny is as being funny or not funny.
Yeah.
If anybody has the confidence to be funny, they deserve a shot at it. Right?
Where did you pick up your first tidbit of comedy, or who's somebody that you kind of feel like you've learned comedy from? I mean, you mentioned your brother. But...
Yeah, that's where it was, is watching me trying to be funny to my brother and him using such an economy of words to shut that down in a way that was funny. You know, I remember a phone call with him, and like so many years ago, where I pick up the phone, hello, and he just goes off on this expletive rant tirade of just words that didn't really make any sense. And I tried everything I could to be funny back, and the only thing I could say when he finished his expletive rant was, "Papa don't preach." That was the most vulgar thing I could think of in contrast to his rant. And if you were to put that in a show, that's funny, right? I wasn't being funny on purpose at the time. I was just trying to keep up. And that became funny because I was clearly operating at a different RPM than he was.
Well, I think you've kind of touched on something that is pretty important in most comedy, in that you almost have to have your beating boy. You need something to bounce off of, whether it's self-deprecation, but to have somebody help with the punchline when we're talking about film or theater, removed from stand-up. Is that there still needs to be the person who's innocent and not in on the joke, so that we can, as the audience, take that joke in.
I think that's part of comedy. I don't think that that's necessary. I think that is one method of getting a laugh from an audience, of them going, "Oh, we're in on this too."
Right.
I think there's a lot more depth there, and you can have really great comedy. I look to sort of Who's on First, the old sketch, as being one of the most brilliant pieces of comedy, because it's entirely based on misunderstanding and pace. Comedy is all about a lack of understanding, right? Somebody's missing something.
Right. So I guess to better sort of illustrate what I was trying to say,
Sure.
In that example of Who's on First, those two guys are unaware of the farce that's happening, and that's what lets it keep happening. Oh, I'm sorry, you misunderstood me. What I'm trying to say is the person's name is right, but us as the audience are, for lack of a better term, operating at a higher intelligence. Therefore, we're in on it in that sense.
I think it's always funny when you position the audience as being smarter than the characters.
Oh, that's a good point.
That are on stage. That makes comedy accessible, because no audience member wants to be condescended to as someone laughs.
Yeah. Wow. And this is a lesson for me in comedy.
You're a pretty good master as well, Matt.
No.
Let's not kid ourselves here.
So in the last, let's say, 12 months, you've done a lot.
Have I?
Well, we've got some stuff coming up. You've, I think in 12 months, you got your full union status, correct?
Yep.
That happened.
Yep.
So 2022, last year, you booked on 3?
Yep.
I guess it was 2021 that we shot, but it was released. You did, a short comedy film that has gone international and coming up and being shown again.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's fun.
You've been to, you went to Banff and you went to somewhere in the States. Denver.
Yeah, so the series that I wrote, Socialized Medicine, was an official selection of Series Fest in Denver, which is the largest festival of episodic television in the US. And I participated in their pitch-a-thon where I got to pitch in front of a full theater full of people the idea of my show. And that was a really exciting experience to have people come up to me afterward, not to tell me my show was a great idea, but to tell me that they believed in the characters that I'd written. Because as part of that pitch, you kind of give a character description of each of the main cast, and people were seeing themselves in it. And I was making what's a really terrible experience something fun and absurd for people. So that was probably one of my highlights from last year.
It needs to be mentioned. You had a paid trip.
Yeah,
Denver, right?
Yeah, they brought me to Denver
you got selected
to do that pitch. Yeah, absolutely. It's not like I just showed up at the festival with a bunch of business cards,
which you could do.
Yeah, which people did.
But
I had a woman who did show up with a handful of business cards, and after seeing my pitch, she asked me to edit her feature. So. Yeah, and I'm like, I'm not an editor.
That's why I was like, I didn't know what to say to that. I'm sure you didn't.
I'm not an editor, so I did it. I edited it twice, and the first one was really highly critical feedback. And she went away and took those revisions to heart and showed me another revision that is a movie I'd go and see. Which is great. And the one of the things I really love about editing is you don't have to necessarily have the answer for somebody. You can just poke some of the holes in it, but then also bridge some of the gaps. And so I saw a few holes in the plot, parts where maybe they were a little bit soft, and made a few suggestions. And she was really, really nice. She's like, I actually wrote this character with your name, and I'd love for you to play that character when this film gets made. So. It's all relationships.
Yeah. I would say, that's something else that you've got this great knack for is the way you cultivate and nurture relationships. And, I think there's different ways to utilize relationships, especially in this business. Yeah. One thing I know about you is loyalty is a very, very high currency for you, and it goes both ways. What keeps your chin up?
Great question. It's a business filled with a lot of people who are looking for the wrong things out of it. And so if you're looking for a quick buck, if you're looking for fame, if you're looking for any of those things, good luck. You will show up, burn out, and leave very, very quickly in that business. And so for me with relationships, what I'm looking for is people who are really, truly passionate about it and who show up, who do what they say they're going to do. I don't have a lot of time on this planet to wait for other people to get things done. And so the teams that I put around me are the ones that are going to get it done. And otherwise, I'm just not interested. Like, I'll find another way. I'll go around, I'll go under, I'll go through. Let's go.
Well, yeah, I would say the J in your name probably stands for tenacity. I never thought about it. Maybe it's Christ Jesus. Holy smokes.
Yeah. These are life lessons. Yeah. Dude, you looked a lot better just over 2,000 years ago.
Yeah. I thought you were talking about me.
Dude, I'm older than you. I can't say that.
Yeah. Okay, here's something that I put in front of each guest.
Okay. Is it
being the first?
Is it Hot Wings? No, that show's been done.
Yeah, I know.
Dang.
But there's a hunger out there for it, so we could do Hot Wings.
You know what we should do? Is some form of like a cider thing and the progressively more
Stronger?
Interesting.
Oh, something more interesting.
Interesting. I want to say that. I don't know, who this audience is yet. Something to that effect. There's a spin to be put on this show.
I think so. Yeah, I think you're now a producer.
Yeah.
Okay, so here's the little game we're going to play.
Okay.
You're going to name. You'll have to definitely stretch your brain that you have to name 5 movies in 10 seconds that get to exist in our canon. Moving forward, every other film is wiped off of the existence of the planet.
5 films?
5 films. Cue the pretty music and go.
Amelie, best movie ever made. Blow, incredible performances from Johnny Depp throughout that entire portrayal of his entire life. Star Wars, because I think Back to the Future is the perfect movie, and I just really love all the stuff in Back to the Future too, so I gotta go with that too.
That was great. That was great. And I just rewatched Back to the Future, and wow.
It's the perfect movie.
It's incredible.
Incest. It's got a flying car.
Yeah.
It's got time travel.
It doesn't have a flying car. Oh, it does
It
at
does.
the end.
It does.
Right.
That's what makes it the perfect movie.
I know. Yes.
It's got Christopher Lloyd in it.
Yeah.
And Michael J. Fox.
Yeah.
You can't get better actors who understand their brand better than
Yeah.
those two working together.
And we all got to see Crispin Glover for a moment be captured, but not harnessed.
Exactly.
Dude, absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for taking the time.
My pleasure.
You'll always be my number one.
Oh, thanks. Not this guy?
No. Okay, I'm hoping that thing stayed recording the whole time.
Does it do 30-minute chunks only?
No, it just it had
Dude,
3 bars.
you okay?
Yeah.